This is Annette Fisher, a longtime friend of mine, and she's agreed to join me this morning to talk about a few of our mutual clients. One of the clients that I really loved that was such a success story. So let's start with a great success story. Um, was Joe, who was up in the Bronx, and she was living with her mother. It was actually her mother's house. The mother was now in the nursing home for a couple of years. Tell me what you remember about meeting her.
Well, what many people don't realize, so the house was actually in her mother's name at the time. And so, because I do have a background as a certified senior advisor, certified senior real estate specialist, certified aging in place specialist, it goes on and on. But in any event, like when I'm talking to people, I have a couple of licenses. Real estate broker is one of them. And so I try to really not be there for the purpose of, hey, I really think you should sell your house so I can make my commission kind of thing. I really want to find out what is going on with the person. And so the daughter was actually old enough for them to be able to get a reverse mortgage. So it would have been possible for her to do the mortgage if the house maybe was in a life estate. What I advise is that people really have to talk to an attorney because a lot of times I've seen people who just turn around and they put their name on the deed and they do a $10 uh, exchange of a fee, and a regular real estate attorney might make that deed up. And so that becomes a problem because then when that person later might sell that house, they could have to pay an awful lot of capital gains because they didn't get that step up. So they want to talk to their attorney as well as talk to an accountant to figure out the numbers of it. So what I like to do is to involve those people in the conversation. And with her particular situation, by making a couple of little changes, she was actually able to stay in the house for the rest of her life if that's what she chose, as long as she continued using a reverse mortgage on it as a primary residence. And she was able to then get monies every month in order to keep up with the upkeep and even just things like paying gas, etc. And at a later date, it does have to be paid back. And so, just to quickly disclose, I do work for a company, Fort Funding Corp, and they've been in business for almost 30 years now. I've worked for them for I believe it's the last 15 years, and it's been quite a ride. They have branches in a couple of different states. So I'm licensed in New York and New Jersey. And for some reason, I'm not finding my regular banner, but we'll put this one up for you so I can just properly disclose for you that the company is actually Fort Funding. Our branch office for me, I just got transferred. So that number you see on the back of the Fort Funding card is actually now NMLS 152367. And so, with this particular situation, the person does have to get counseling, etc. But it worked out really well for her because even though her mother was in the nursing home, luckily she was still competent. She was able to do business with their attorney to figure out, what the proper situation was. And now her daughter was able to continue to be able to live in that home because before they had both of their incomes, two social securities. And now she's thinking, how am I going to stay in this house? If my mom passes, I need that other $1,600 a month. That's the difference from make or break. And another thing that I've noticed a lot is that many of the clients that I come across do not take advantage of the various real estate tax deductions. So, for example, a person might not have taken, even not having to be 65, they could have enhanced star if they don't have children living in the house. So that was something I had mentioned to her to get that deduction because she wasn't 65 yet. But while her mother was still on the deed, they were able to get that deduction, but then when her mother would pass, right, they'd lose the deduction if she didn't actually make an application for it, because then the name of who owns the house would actually be changing. So all of that is something that a person definitely should be thinking about. There's also the Enhanced Star program. So once she was 65, her mom had the Enhanced Star, but she did not have it. So I was explaining to her that when her mom passes and that deed changes into her name, she would then have to reapply. And with the Enhanced Star, it's actually an application right now. I believe it's every 2 years that you have to reapply to get it. It's based on income. And so if the person's income changes, it might be the difference between if they qualify or didn't qualify. And it's actually on a sliding scale. So sometimes people might think, oh, I make too much money to qualify for that, which indeed they might qualify, but maybe they are getting less of a discount. And then there's also the VA discounts. So in her situation, no one had served, so she couldn't get those discounts. But there's so many things that I like to look at when I'm talking about these different things. Medicaid is very important. Sometimes people are on Medicaid, i.e., her mom might have had to transfer over to Medicaid, except that the problem
Well,
was if she
actually,
did, the house
uh,
wasn't protected.
actually, her mother was already in the nursing home, but she did not, because her daughter kept insisting that she was going to take her home. She hadn't supplied any of the banking information, reached out to the lawyer. We were actually referred this client, or you were referred the client by an attorney who was talking to them about that. So my role was to see what money she had at the bank, just to facilitate for her, because she was afraid to go to the bank. She didn't know how. It was interesting because she was a secretary before, but being retired, and being alone, she was afraid to go and do these things. So I took her to the bank. We saw what was there. We spoke with the people at the nursing home. I spoke with her mother, who actually had tubes down, feeding tube. She was not able to speak. She would actually never be able to speak or eat again. That's the situation. And her mother was actually aware of this, but Joe, the daughter, was not accepting it. So by being able to give her the options and see some bright options, it changed the whole dynamic of what she was willing to talk about, what she was willing to talk about with her mother. And it ended up that she did actually go onto hospice in order for them to let her die peacefully. They um, removed the tubes. We brought her to a hospital where it took about 2 weeks for her to pass peacefully. One of the things that I remember there, and I use a lot, is that one of the uh, hospice pastors came in and said, when the person is ready, they go. Right? Not it's God's will, it's something that you have the choice and you don't have the choice. He said, when the person is ready to go, then they go. So we all went to the funeral, and it was, instead of it being a terrible situation afterwards, where she was now scrambling to do things, she and her mother both knew that everything had been set up. She was going to be able to live in the house for the rest of her life. Things would go well.